Chapter 9. Metaphysical Inertia. Inertia, a property of matter by which it remains at rest or in uniform motion in the same straight line unless acted upon by some external force, or an analogous property of other physical quantities such as electricity, or indisposition to motion, exertion, or change. Inertness. Merriam-Webster.com, March 26th, 2024. Park Sun-young tried and failed to get an audience with the mysterious Richard Patel alias Ricky 15 times before he finally hatched his own plan. This required pushing his way past the receptionist with metal-haired Min Seok, the drummer for the worship band, and Tae Soo, the bald bassist. This not because he needed muscle, but he wanted 2 witnesses. That was only scriptural. And he wanted to keep the situation secret if it weren't a bad omen. So he thought it best only to involve those already involved. Pastor Park Sun-young waited until he saw lights in Ricky's office. He was staked out with the boys from the band, who were content to snack, play on their phones, and sneak off for the occasional cigarette, coming back with a reek of cheap cologne, hoping Pastor Sun-young didn't notice. The light in the office came on about 8 in the evening, and Sun-young was actually surprised to see the receptionist when he and the boys ran up the stairs of the mini-mall. Hold on. The director is out of normal office hours. Hey, I like your hairpin, bassist Tae-sul said. Is it French? No, I made it, she melted, and would have fallen into his arms a second later if Park Sun-young hadn't kicked the door of Ricky's office in, reminding her she couldn't swoon. Tae-sul had that effect on women. He was a very good bassist. Min-seok couldn't touch him despite those locks. As soon as Park Sun-young stalked into the office, he slipped on something a cat brought up and fell right into it, mussing his jacket and getting cat yak on his shoe. The receptionist cleared her throat. I told you he was busy. Ricky swore under his breath, then switched to English as he scrambled to address this forceful entry. The cat puked. I was cleaning it. If you had waited, Park Sun-young regained his feet, the boys from the band fast wiping him off. The receptionist announced a retreat by closing the door behind her. She sensed a discussion was coming. Sun-young said in English with a thick Korean accent, We saw your cat hole. Ricky blinked. When? On a mountain in China 3 months ago. You know I tried to meet for you with 3 months? 3 months, Ricky! He held up his fingers for emphasis. Listen, I'm being busy. You see Papa Dom in the corner over there being terrified by everybody. We just got back. I let him out the carrier. Little guy is sick. Don't you play game with me. He make a hole, then blah! And Sun-young mimed it. We see you, all 3. Right? He looked to the boys. Their English was scant, so he quickly summarized in Korean. They screwed up their foreheads, then nodded quickly, turning to Ricky and assenting. 네, said Tae-sul. 알았어, said Min-seok. They say they agree. Ricky took off a jacket and sat down heavily behind his desk. You Asians are crazy. You Asians are crazy! Listen, nobody thinks of India with... Just tell me what you do with cat hole. Ricky blew air out his lips. Listen, Sun-young. And you're Min-seok? Yes, and Tae-sul. I remember. I like you guys. Listen. I want very much to trust you. And you know I'm being here to help. But the very fact you're here, there are very important things going on you are knowing nothing about. And I can't be the one to break it. We have time. Park Sun-young crossed his arms. The boys did as well. How do I even know you're seeing anything? Oh! Sun-young shook his finger excitedly and soon had the infrared camera out of a jacket pocket. It wasn't great footage, but it proved they were on the level. Ricky was in a corner and he conceded. Okay. First, every one of you, who is God? The pastor translated the question, and all 3 on understanding turned as one and said, Jesus Christ. He died, he beat death, he come back, he lives. Yes? Amen. Absolutely. Repent, believe in heart, confess with mouth, Jesus is God, he rise from the dead. Boom, you have a God, he has a you. In a nutshell, said Ricky. Do you know what we're really dealing with, Pastor? No! Why you think I'm here? Okay, hold on. Table of Nations. You know Table of Nations after Babel. Moses is telling Israel how God chose one nation for himself and gave the rest to the gods, right? You are knowing your Pentateuch. Deuteronomy 32. That's right. Wow, actually, very, very good. Verses 8 through 9. He separates the nations from the Abrahamic line. Jacob's are his, the rest are being the devil's, basically. Well, said Sun Young. Come on, Ricky protested. Okay. So Israel, 1. The rest are about 69. So Jesus comes, dies, rises again. Now it's good for all the world, right? Well, but the old gods, the rebellious ones, those dirty fallen angels, they're not being very happy about this. My own India has a pantheon. It lists more of these guys than I think there are from what I've researched. There are at least 69, and they mix with us. Don't ask me how. And had offspring. Genesis 6, Goliath. Jude speaks of this. The first chapters of Job, Nephilim in Hebrew, translated giants, often rendered sons of God in modern translations, yes? They mixed. I don't know how. But this is what the word says. And I've seen it, my friends, firsthand. And the Sethite interpretation of Genesis 6, it is the fiction. Sun Young was impatient. What does this have to do with... I'm getting to it. See, every country, every family, every people group, they all have these fallen angels trying to manage them, like from the devil's rebellion, you know. Quetzalcoatl, Thor, Odin, Zeus, Jupiter, Mars, Vishnu, Krishna, Shiva, you get it? Now, their real names, these are not them. But these are international depictions of the fallen, the angels, the devil tricked into rebellion. But with Jesus, those fakers, those fallen angels, they lose their right to people and to land, country by country, continent by continent. So they are re-establishing boundaries on the dark side of society, with the black markets, with socialist states, with dictatorships, with evil corporations, with mobs, with celebrities, with pop culture, with pirates and gangsters, you see. In America, MS-13, Hollywood, CIA, Mormonism, Scientology. In Japan and Korea, Yakuza, Juche, K-pop, all the devil, yes? K-pop is a diarrhea of a Beelzebub, Pastor Sun Young confirmed, but perhaps facetiously. As it were, Bollywood in America do it even more evil. Excuse my hyperbole of your country with the K-pop. It's not a very good metaphor. But you see, so the people at the edges, they worship the devil and grow the power of the fallen angels, the false gods, what are idolized. Angels, fallen angels in disguise, pretending to be gods, and being all of the old legends of the old cultures and societies and becoming modern pop culture and celebrity worship and the like, you see. So I'm getting to it faster. In North Korea, behind the fake Marxist dynasty is none other than one such fallen brute. He calls himself Miru. And he is making big moves and alliances. And alliances with whatever is the evil one in Russia running their mob, you see? Okay, hold. This is like in Daniel, when an angel comes, but he fights a Persia prince and shows up a long time later. Very much, especially when you are factoring in the time dilation. The thing is, we are doing the fighting. Well, we're helping, I guess. Come again. In the other world. Not hell, not heaven, not the Romans' purgatory. Think of it like a world between worlds. The liminal loading screen of God's computer. God's woodshed, you know? A woodshed. In God's woodshed, there is an infestation of wasps. There is an infestation of wasps. And in God's woodshed, or maybe it is a wood shop. Anyway, the wasps have 69 nests. It is a huge wood shop. And each nest, what they do is steal people and they milk them. Well, their souls. They use women like caged hens in a factory farm for eggs. The men are made seed producers and are also fuel for nightmare demons eat like candy. North Korea, the biggest beehive in God's old woodshed, because they have a very secure foothold, but also somehow the least powerful. Maybe they are little bees, tiny wasps. I'm getting lost in the metaphor. Where was it? Calm. So with calm, we come to see, to understand the situation, yes? This time Ricky was uninterrupted, so he continued. Now, we know how to break up the wasps, we at Kalma. We did so 6 years ago. Now we do so when we can. But it is an involved process. Many balls are being juggled in the air, juggling. And we see the hardship, and we see you, Pastor. And you're really doing good in the spirit world. Better than almost anyone, though all churches have their specialties. And by helping you, we hope to help those who need it, while simultaneously fighting them, the bad ones. When we free victims of authoritarianism under the dynasty, we learn, incidentally, about the spiritual landscape there, in that corner of the spirit world, where is God's woodshed. We are helping them escape with the portals and sending them back to you at the portals, and we are asking questions in between, and nobody is the wiser, because everyone thinks North Koreans are crazy to start with. They tell you about the portal, you think they're out of their head. Why wouldn't you? So we get intel, we helped save your family, we hurt the bad guys, advanced the long-term goals in the background, and everybody wins. But that's not all, Pastor Sun Young said, pointing his finger and standing up. Settle down, Ricky said. You're right, that's not all. My goodness, you're worse than that Japanese guy. Nobody is worse than the Japanese! Pak Sun Young beat Ricky's desk with his fist and jumped to his feet. Min Suk and Tae Sul got the drift, standing as well. Sakia! Yelled Min Suk. Sun Young immediately lowered his tone and turned to the musicians, saying in Korean, No, listen, settle down, son, settle down. Both musicians sat. Sun Young remained standing and returned his gaze to Ricky. Please, do not compare us to Japanese people. Okay, sorry. So, there is an autistic girl who went missing in Japan. From our intelligence in Russia and North Korea, we know she gave something to the regime, like incredibly recently. Something like, we only heard mention of this thing on 2 occasions. Of course she did, the Japanese witch, Sun Young muttered. Well, hold on, Pastor, hold on. She's still God's girl, yes? Don't, look, we think it's a mix-up. She's autistic, but something, she is finding her way to God's woodshed, I'm talking about, okay? And somehow she is finding her way back. And somehow the way back is being in North Korea. Now, you don't know God's woodshed. It's hard to, hold on. Ricky turned and activated a computer at his desk. After a few clicks, he brought up a fractal image in psychedelic colors. It looked like the silhouette of a very fat Buddha lying on his side atop a very technicolor mandala in the background. Pastor Pak San-yuk craned his neck, as did Tae-sul and Min-suk. Then he straightened up his head and pointed at the shape, turning to Ricky. Mandelbrot set. Ooh, Mandelbrot, echoed Tae-sul. You Koreans really know your math. Pastor Pak Sun-yuk looked at him sideways. Ricky pretended not to notice. Yes, Mandelbrot set. He brought up the formula. Okay, so you plug in the number. It's on the set. It's dark. It's not on the set, then it's the color. If it's in a gray area, almost on the set, but not quite. That's the third color you see there. The pattern that comes from plotting out those numbers on an XY axis is the image you see here. And you can zoom in on it forever as numbers in different quantities are being plugged into the equation, yes? Okay, now, look at this. He brought up a graphic that was very similar but had been rendered partially in 3 dimensions. Ricky said, this is our map from brute force hacking of portals. We're getting pretty good about finding them and predicting them, but as you see, there are many, many thousands. And they aren't in a pattern that is immediately intuitive because they bridge worlds. So there's a third axis. But they do have a pattern going in and out that is very like a fractal. Are you ever shining a light on a wiffle ball and the shadows it makes is almost a square? What is a wiffle ball? Never mind. Anyway, it's like that. The sphere to the square, this world to that world. Something to do with time. It's hard to predict this stuff, where the portals are, and we've been at it 6 years, but there is this cube we are learning of. Anyway, the fallen never could figure it out. They just use unfiltered spirit energy stolen from mankind's own discoveries to split the world. Maybe they're better innovators. Hey, I know. Think of the fallen use of human technology. Think of the fallen use of human technology like how Japan innovates USA technology, yes? Park Sun-young thought about that, nodding slowly, his lips turning down. Yes, they innovate, not invent. Right. So, back to Japanese girl with autism. She's got no chance, Pastor Sonia. She got lost, it is almost assured. Now, here's what gets me. You saw the portal for the family we got out of North Korea a few months ago, yes? I walk up to it and almost touch it, but boom! Slam shut! Park Sun-young clapped his hands for emphasis. Yeah, so on the other side, you saw the other portal. Yes. All three of them nodded. So the North Koreans, they don't know Jesus, most of them. Obviously not all. But they don't know God. Most have never even heard of him, and they need him. So when they go through there, like, have you seen when the eggs of a sea turtle is hatching on the beach and birds come and eat the little turtles before they get out to sea? It is like this. If you do not know Jesus, you are the baby turtle, and the demon bird is going to be eating you. So we make the distance from the North Korean egg to the free sea of South Korea as short as possible using portals. But they are hard to find, at least aligned, because of the shape here. He indicated the screen. So, Pastor Park, in the last 3 months, do you know how many Koreans we've been able to rescue through our use of this method? 352. Park Sun-young didn't even hesitate. Right. And that was just 3 portals having linear in and out. And all along different areas of North Korea's border with China. But here's the thing. That dear leader up north, he is pissed, Pastor. He is madder than hell, you know. Not a happy panda. And something is going to happen any day. We will have to find portals inside North Korea very soon. Imagine if 2 hives of Japanese hornets, the big evil ones, are deciding to work together and take over God's woodshed. North Korea, the hive of the Russian mob, they are growing together, and they are big, fat bugs with a stinger that can stab again and again. Apart, limited in power. Together, combustion. And now the evil engine turn over. Perhaps even worse. There is another possibility, one of war spilling over, taking many collateral lives. So, whatever the reality is, we must be applying pesticide. Pesticide, said Park Sun-young. Okay, I understand. Bad demons, bad people, bad places. These take advantage of good people in good places. You help stop, you do good job, you busy. You love Jesus, I love Jesus, we all love Jesus, and defecators need protectors or demon bird eat turtle. Got it. Now, what you still hiding from me? Ricky drummed his fingers on the desk, then ran hands through his thick hair and said, 6 months ago, before I ever approached your ministry aiding defectors, all the way back then, the Orthodox gypsies on the Russian border received a balloon from North Korea. I told you what the Japanese girl gave North Korea so recently. We have heard of this thing elsewhere. 2 places. One, the Scroll of Rohan, which Eastern gypsies and Russian mobsters regard with deepest affection. 2, the SIM card taped onto the back balloon and sent over with a long-distance drone. On that SIM was a record of a dream a Korean science officer in the regime had, and a document detailing an astonishing possibility. It is the sort of thing I'm thinking only God could be giving him this epiphany. The Eastern gypsies of the forest work with our man in Yakutsk, and he relayed this information to me. Remember, nothing they imagine shall be impossible from Genesis. Park Sun-young nodded. Well, his paper. The world run in cycles, Pastor. And the cycle like we are now knowing from our history books and prophecies and pop culture and music, it is coming around again. But we have no way of reaching that scientist. We only know he has touched base with the church underground in Korea. If only there were a full map of portals, I'm sure 100 shift points are in Korea, half on either side. We have an idea where some Korean portals may be in the north. But we can't just say walking up and down the peninsula with a cat on a leash where there is going to be a portal. This is infeasible. Cats make holes. Sun Young worked that idea around in his head. Or cats, he has a chip in his head. You need like a remote control. What? The band fellows earnestly requested translation. Sun Young provided. Ricky waited, then explained. Only some cats. You give them a snack near where a shift point lies, they may thank you by opening. But it takes energy and then they are puking. If they have not been eating recently, they quickly fall asleep. And if you make the cat mad, you have to wait for them to forget they are mad. It takes a day or so, sometimes a week. But this is only being with very, very finicky cats. In the meantime, if you know where a portal is, just throw the cat at the wall. He'll open it up before he lets himself get hurt. But he will be mad. Close it as fast as he can and may run off. So never make the cat mad. You get stranded. We've been branching out into cat carriers we can throw for that reason, among others. Park Sun Young blinked at him. This rear. I see a cat open a portal. That's what happened. You're not making me into big joke. No. Why the cat can do that? I don't. Nobody knows. Has something to do with cats being closer to spirit worlds in the Tower of Babel. In fact, it may be a collateral consequence of that verse in scripture. Nothing they imagine will be impossible. That's why I'm bringing it up. At Babel, something happened. Something with a scientific mechanism we don't understand. But still, I don't know, in honesty. There's lots of information going around right now. Some people say it's recent. Some say it's ancient. I am not knowing which is which. Look, come along. Bring the band. But you carry a gun. Don't worry, we'll provide. There is a prospective route to keep defector lines open. I would need at least 2 more people. 3 would be even better. Plus, you are being converted already. We need those who know God. They won't be taken. The other reason I come to this country is to start an office, for Colin. We are making great progress, but we aren't being everywhere yet. You could be my manager, eh? So, what do you say? What do you say? God, God, you good guys? The pastor blinked, turned to the band and said, he's telling me nobody knows why cats are magic, but we know Jesus and he has an operation into North Korea and we could help. They all stared at Ricky several moments, then in turn slowly nodded, but Park held up a finger before the meeting ended. By any chance, the document that was sent to you from gypsies, to your Yakutsman, then however it gets you. Yes, Ricky nodded. Can I look? Is that possible? Of course, but don't get excited. The ideas require something like a dictatorship to research. It is not being cheap. If we understand the process is what produced the cube in the first place, it got streamlined and put to evil rather than good, and now the ripples reach us even in this time. Hold on, I do have a physical copy. Ricky rummaged around in a drawer before coming up with several pages held together by a paperclip. Thank you, Mr. Patel, the pastor said, and stood with the boys. You are most welcome. Let me get my feet under me tonight, Pastor, and I'll be contacting you in the morning about our next move. Very good, said Park Sun Young. He and his fellows bowed, then made their exit. Translated to English, here is the document Ricky gave Park Sun Young. This is not formal, but the information is too important to trivialize with convention. In the night I had a dream of something beautiful but evil, because it was made out of a pureness of dark intention. In the day and the morning I sat thinking about the dream, and as I sat I saw a bird, and I saw a hungry cat of our dear leader's pets watching the bird, and then I saw him walk away only to return later and capture the bird. As I wondered what impelled the animal to do anything, I was transported beyond this hermit kingdom in my very mind, and quite clearly I was able to perceive what I think is a hidden truth, one that must be remembered. Certainly there are powers beyond our world. Certainly a painting has a painter. Certainly our dear leader is wrong. Here is what I have either discovered or what has been revealed to me. Here is the new burden I must bear. Metaphysical inertia, abbreviated. E equals mc squared. I equals E. I divided by lowercase I equals A. A is less than E. E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass multiplied by the speed of light times itself. E divided by m equals c squared divided by m. You can derive the energy potential of a resting object through a division incorporating its mass and the squared speed of light. So what makes E? We know its equivalence, but what is it? If you say an adult human being is a man or a woman, does that tell you what either is? You can derive an equation of population expansion from how men and women reproduce. Are they now misshapen rabbits? Fibonacci came to his realization watching rabbits multiply. An existing mathematical relationship is not the total scope of a concept. I say that to say this. Energy exists regardless of mass or acceleration, the speed of light. For example, a pebble in the darkness still has potential energy contained in its atomic structure. The technical term is zero-point energy, controversially observed to be in expansion. I want to explore a potential aspect of E. What makes E? The answer is I. I stands for ideas. Call the concept metaphysical inertia. Ideas create energy, which has a compound effect of subsequent chain reactions. I equals E. E equals mc squared. Einstein's idea became this well-known formula, but the idea itself, the metaphysical inertia, is a variable quantity, just like the E, the M, and the C. The difficulty is in determining how it can be quantified. It is my contention the social media of the West, or perhaps more appropriately, the power behind such social media, seeks to capitalize on metaphysical inertia for control over those they've harnessed into their global neural network, just as our dear leader uses similar tactics to brainwash our own people. Logos in capitalist marketing and our own state propaganda function similarly. Consider how a square is a summary or archetype of a cube in a subdimensional medium. While we're in 3 dimensions, additional dimensions are inconceivable. A hypercube looks like an unrolled cube in fewer dimensions, but with each square face as a 3-dimensional cube would appear. Salvador Dali made a painting of the Christ crucified on a Hinton hypercube, showing an understanding of dimensionality and time that is profound. That's called corpus hypercubus. Cambridge Analytica, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, AI algorithms, machine learning, ML, and the like are designed to capture the essence of I and stimulate I into production of E. Because axioms define reality, any quotient of I is naturally restricted by those axioms. Launch a payload from a catapult. It may be unpredictable precisely where that payload goes, but it certainly won't leave the Earth and levitate, just as there is a physics to reality, there is a metaphysics to the supernatural, or the metaverse, or morality. As a piece of gravel in the dark stores vast quantities of potential energy, zero-point energy, within its atomic structure, the E in an I, the energy in an idea, the energy within metaphysical inertia, is retained in that idea package. An analogy could be made between the concept and a seed planted in the ground. In either scenario, an impetus is needed for the seed or the idea. An impetus causes the seed to sprout. with an idea, what is the impetus? American bastards in Silicon Valley want to know whether or not they term these things as I have. They're playing with quantities and energies transcending our present dimension and pushing for results metaphysics won't allow. For the same reason, a catapult payload can't levitate. The results they seek can't be attained, no matter how hard they try to control the distribution of I across a digital metaverse, which is inferior to the actual metacosmos that produced it. E equals mc squared. Ideas equal energy. I equals E. Metaphysical inertia becomes physical energy. So, the idea of a pandemic, false or real, creates the energy of response when such ideas are acted upon. This we saw through retroactive banishment measures foisted on those with defectors in the family. The ideas pushed the regime to take measures. They became energy, and the collateral implications are still felt across our land. When I equals COVID-19, the resultant E is consolidated by those who produced I. As in, they know the I of COVID-19 is a false one, but E will be produced as they forcibly inject the I of pandemic into the world's already dying population. Accordingly, if you believe the I, which is in fact a false narrative, you are taken over by the E, which the deceivers intended, and so you can be harnessed by them toward the outcome intended with this narrative from its initiation. It is just the same process as indoctrination here, and why even at the top of the game of science in our country, I still must regularly write white papers regarding the majesty of the dynastic tyrants who pose as gods in this frozen land. You see? Do you understand the subtlety of I equals E? I've just described propaganda, the effectiveness of such representing a further proof toward this concept. Again, what I'm attempting to do is identify deeper means of formulaic prediction in reference to the conversion of metaphysical inertia into reactions beyond the metaphysical. COVID-19, as a global propaganda scare, one utilizing the same techniques as our propagandists in North Korea, is strong evidence toward my proposal that I equals E. But it also proves something else. There is a reaction to I which isn't true and which is true. Those who engineered the false I failed to calculate for equal and opposite reactions. As quarks may appear different based on observation, those who receive the I of a lie also react differently. Some are influenced as intended. Some have a knee-jerk reaction against the false I. Which side of the equation balances things out? Those who reject the false I, and here's why. Reality has variable constraints in the metacosmos, which are just as binding as subdimensional constraints in physics. There are axioms which are true. So an I that is rooted in those axioms will stimulate a response even if it deviates from its root. For all lies must have some foothold in truth or they can't be believed. However, the I, which is true, will overcome that response. Meanwhile, the I, which isn't true, stimulates a twofold reaction. That which is intended and that which is collateral. Regardless of proportion, the false I is overcome by axiomatic response in due time. Metaphorically speaking, a house made of cards and painted will still block wind, But the false house doesn't have strength to do so long. Though it casts a shadow, the wind tears it down in due time. How near or far that due time is depends on the strength of the house of cards, or in our COVID-19 example, associated propaganda. Meanwhile, a strong house, a true house, can handle the harshest winds. COVID-19 is quantity I that is synthetic added to quantity I that is actual. You can't have any I which doesn't have some level of true I. So to represent this, let's call true ideas I and false ideas lowercase I. Quantity I divided by lowercase I represents propaganda, while quantity I divided by I represents truth. I divided by lowercase I equals impact or action. Call that A. So fulfilling the equation I divided by lowercase I in propaganda, working that out produces A. To represent mathematically, I divided by lowercase I equals A. The level of truth divided by the lie equals overall effect on society in the fullness of time. In the case of COVID-19, there is more I than there is I, lowercase I than uppercase I. Meaning you've got a case of something like, say, 1 divided by 50, which produces decimal 02A, or A in the quantity of decimal 02. Meanwhile, I divided by I, or 1 divided by 1, equals 1. A basic truth is exponentially more powerful than a truth which rests on a lie. However, when you have mostly truth and only a little lie, you get results. 1 divided by decimal 02 equals 50. Even so, there is still a division of 1. So uppercase I divided by lowercase I equals A. A is a form of E, but one that isn't pure or whole, whereas I equals E. It could be expressed that I divided by I equals 1 and I divided by I equals E, whereas I divided by lowercase I will always equal A. A is less than E because any dilution, even infinitesimally, will keep it from approaching wholeness. A perspective framework to inform molecular study. As a thought experiment, this concept is an interesting way of examining social interpersonal relationships and how these are directly rooted in the molecular and even that which is behind the molecular, metaphysics. I expect metaphysical inertia has many forms. There's more than one form or expression of energy: atomic energy, gravitational energy, electrical energy, magnetic energy. They're all energies, but in different expressions. Metaphysical inertia would necessarily have different expressions as well. An idea from emotional impetus will be different than one from deliberately neutral pragmatism, though the veneer of emotion will necessarily cover any potential metaphysical inertia. Emotion, intention, experience, mental capability, age, and other similar factors or variables will influence personal decisions. They will also influence the induction of I as introduced externally. Propaganda will have a generally even distribution based on expected averages in terms of understanding and impact, but there will always be outliers, and how such messages actually influence a population will be influenced by said outliers. It's to be expected large quotients of the population will ingest and accept the narrative, others will not, statistically, and estimating the numbers is difficult, though I expect not impossible. If 0-point energy as a quantity is increasing, so is Planck's constant, and this would mean the speed of light is decreasing. These things are physical. But if thoughts are carried through our brains via electrical reaction, that would ultimately mean our very capability to think and execute action is similarly in decline. Accordingly, the strength of I and the resultant E it can produce are in symbiotic devolution. The meter's length is defined by the distance light travels over a specific amount of time. However, this measurement may not be describing total velocity of light. Light speed is measured based on how long it takes to see a reflection over a certain distance. But seeing the reflection indicates the light has reached the secondary surface and bounced back to you. What you've measured is the time it takes light to go from you to the other object and back. Assuming a division of 2 would make it seem that the one-way speed of light is the sum of that division. This is a conventional assumption Einstein admitted he worked within. However, it is a convention. The actual speed of light has not been empirically determined owing to the impossibility of measuring it in one direction. You'd have to know the one-way speed of light to calibrate the clock so you can measure it. It's a bit of a paradox. Our understanding of light as a constant is a conventional understanding, not an empirical one. And over time, being measured with multiple instruments at intervals, the speed of light in 2 ways has been observed to decrease. I've seen it myself. In some instances, the same methods of measurement were used years after an initial speed was determined, and they showed a decrease. Some ignore this anomalous reduction in light's overall speed, chalking it up to increasingly accurate means of measurement. That doesn't explain the increase in zero-point energy. Whereas said ZPE increase explains the continuously reducing measurements of the actual speed light travels at. Also notably, though the precise velocity of the speed of light has been known to decrease, it has not been known to increase as more precise measurement becomes available. Light is decreasing, ZPE is expanding, and our minds function utilizing molecular relationships depending on these hidden atomic forces. Einstein proved mass becomes energy at the speed of light. But before that, mass is matter. If ideas are energy, that's a real metaphysical link to the physical. The things you think are the things you become. What you become affects how others act. The reaction of others affects society. Actions of society impact ecologies. Ecologies do affect the weather. Weather does impact society. Society impacts individuals. The I equals E proposition seems rooted in reality. An object pushed into another can knock it down if the objects are in a certain proportion. A small domino can knock down a larger one, and the larger one can knock down a still larger block, and this inertial wave of energy can be crashed into continuously larger blocks until conceivably the Yugyong Hotel might be bowled over. As the chain reaction continues, the energy builds. A butterfly flapping his wings causes a hurricane. But before the butterfly can flap his wings, he has to have some sort of thought, some metaphysical inertia. Before we become the things we think, we must have things about which to think. Feeding the energy engine of your mind, conducive food for thought will collaterally reform your exterior self, and accordingly have a domino effect on society that, as it escalates along exponential segues, may even come to affect the weather. The food for thought we are force-fed in this hermit kingdom is not conducive. However, there is something we can do even if many of us cannot escape. Thinking on that which is axiomatic facilitates a chain reaction that will always be stronger than thinking on that which is not axiomatic. So a single individual operating on a I divided by I equals 1 basis can overcome an infinity of ideas that are not I divided by I equals 1, but are instead I divided by lowercase I equals A. Even the strongest level of lowercase I, 100 billion, etc., is less than 1 divided by 1 equals 1. 1 divided by 100 trillion is decimal 0.0000000000001. The most expensive, well considered, persuasive propaganda cannot resist a chain reaction initiated by a single individual. The time it takes for that chain reaction to mature is hard to pin down. But it may be that reactions built on an I divided by I equals 1, that reactions built on I divided by I equals 1 axioms may never actually lose inertia. Being reciprocally introduced continuously through perception over time. There's your cold fusion. Regardless of the application, the capability of the individual to act on an idea in a way which affects society at a global level in the fullness of time must be appreciated. This itself is evidence of metaphysics directing physics. I want this information to be known by those who will produce I divided by I consistently and help reverse the negative cycle we have come to follow. My dream last night involved a golden cube, and it drank the darkness. A true I divided by I embodiment of I equals E. But it was stolen for a wicked reason, and after my dream, all I can do is get this idea beyond the hermit kingdom. I hope I have initiated a proper chain reaction with this information. When he put it down, Tae Sul said, "What did I just read?" Park Sun-young snorted. "See? Not all Koreans know their math. Min Suk." Min Suk wore headphones and was banging on an electronic drum set. He looked up, took off the headphones. "Yeah, boss. Never mind. Get over here. We need to pray for this man in the north. God has certainly opened the eyes of his soul. He has a target on his back. We must pray he finds Christ, and soon. Reading this, I feel his time is short indeed." The godly Koreans prayed for their brother in the north, and after several hours more discussing the contents of the paper and their conversation with Ricky and the portals in the mountains, decided the best thing to do would be to get a good night's sleep and wait till they heard back from Ricky. All three men had the strangest dreams.